Merry Christmas. So glad you made it here today, and we have people watching in our overflow as well. So Merry Christmas to all of y'all. This past week, my niece sent me a little video of her little boy eating breakfast, and I thought I would share it with you. Here it is, check it out.
And heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing.
Yes. He has two older sisters, and they're the one who helped him out when those lyrics escaped him. So that's a kind of a microcosm of his life, right? Probably. So glad you're here today. You know, you can give yourself a congratulations because you made it to the Christmas Eve service in one piece. In one piece. And I know that it's difficult. I know that it's difficult to make it here. I know that you guys have a lot going on, a lot of planning, a lot of gifts still there, food's in the oven, relatives, people here from out of town. I get it. Christmas is a little bit crazy. It's hectic. You know, it's interesting. You know, today we spend thousands of dollars to hire a wedding planner. I would suggest that we take that money and put it into a Christmas planner. Don't you think? Because we need help in planning Christmas. Sometimes Christmas gets so crazy and so messed up. There have been people through the years who have wanted to cancel and stop Christmas altogether. One of the first persons I know of that tried to do that was that green, slimy fellow called the Grinch. Remember the Grinch? He was so upset with the little Who people in Whoville. He was so distraught about Christmas. He was so bitter that he stole every bit of Christmas, all the trees, all the lights, all the food, even the last crumb. The Grinch was committed to trying to stop Christmas. And then there was Ebenezer Scrooge, wasn't there? Scrooge. Hey, we've got to work. We've got to get things done. We've got to produce. We don't have time for Christmas. Christmas is emotionalism. It's sentimentality. Who needs Christmas? Bah, humbug. But the OG, who tried to get rid of Christmas has to be Herod the Great. Herod the Great was the leader in that part of Judea. He was a mean, brutal leader. The wise men came into his palace and they asked the king, "We've come here to worship the king of the Jews, this baby who's going to be king. Where is he?" Herod didn't know what was going on. He said, "Hey, wise men, you go out, leave my palace, you find this king and bring him here to me so I can worship him." But these wise men knew that Herod was up to no good. So they didn't return to the palace. Herod sent out a decree, and he had all the newborn boys in Bethlehem, 2 years of age and under, slaughtered. It's known as the Massacre of the Innocents. Herod is the villain of the original Christmas story. So that first Christmas Eve, in many ways, was a dark night. It was a silent night. But out of the darkness, God did something. He placed something in that pitch black sky. In Matthew 2, verse 9, it says, "When they heard the king, the wise men they departed, and behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced. They rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. When they came into the house, into that stable there, they saw the young child with Mary, and they fell down and worshiped him. 2,000 years ago, God commissioned that brilliant star to pierce the darkness in the night, to grab the attention of these wise men and to lead them to the real king. God provided a sacred GPS system so these guys could follow it and follow that star that led all the way to a stable and shone its light right there in the manger. No matter how dark things get, God always provides a star. A star. And the star in this story symbolizes the guidance of God himself. Think about your life. There are a lot of people here in the worship center that are dedicated Christ followers. You followed Christ for many, many years. You pray. You seek God's guidance in his word. You're an active member of this church. But there was a time in your life, for most of us here, where you were far away from God and far away from Christ. Think about that time for a moment, if you would. And then remember back to the star that God placed in your life. That star, that person who spoke that word to you, who led you to the light and led you into a saving relationship with Christ himself. Think about that star. That star could have been your mom. That star could have been your dad. That star may have been a close friend. It may have been a college roommate. It may have been a colleague at work. It could have been a teacher, a coach, perhaps even a pastor that guided you to an authentic, saving relationship with God in Christ. You know, it's interesting when you think about the stars and you get outside of the ambient light of Houston and you look up into the night. We know that our galaxy has trillions of stars, and all the galaxies have trillions and trillions of stars. And God tells us in Psalm 147:4 that he determines the number of stars, and he calls them each by name. This wonderful, magnificent, all-powerful source of being calls each star by name. This Christmas Eve, if you're a Christ follower here tonight, recall that person by name in your mind's eye right now. Thank God for them. Thank God for the star they've been in your life. Thank God for the guidance and the light that they have given you and the light to show you the good news of the gospel. There are others here gathered that I would call seekers. You're still seeking to find that relationship with God. You're seeking to find meaning. You're seeking to find hope. It would be my prayer for you tonight that you would begin to follow that star that God has placed in your life, that guide. Jesus himself offers such a wonderful invitation to us if we seek him. He says, "Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door shall be opened unto you. Ask and you shall receive." God will provide a light to guide you to his truth and his life if you just open up your heart and open up your mind to him. These wise men, long ago, had the curiosity and the courage to follow that light. My prayer for you, that you would have that same kind of courage, that same type of curiosity. The good news is the star still shines and the wise still follow. Dostoevsky said, "The darker the night, the brighter the stars." So many times when things are dark, it's when God is able to speak that word of guidance, that word of light to us. The star led to the stable led to the manger. And the manger was a window into the very heart of God himself. The manger symbolizes the love and the length that God has gone to come into our world, to show us what life and love and hope and joy is all about. We know the manger, the crib, eventually led to a cross, which led to a crypt, which led to the crescendo of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. That we might come into a relationship with the God who knows us and loves us. You know, it's interesting. As I was getting ready for this message here this evening and reading about this passage in Matthew 2, I saw something I've never seen before in this Gospel of Matthew, where in Matthew 2, you find the wise men who follow the star to the stable. They look into the manger, and when they saw the child, they worshiped. Then you look at the very end of the Gospel of Matthew. In Matthew 28, look at the symmetry. In verse 17, it said, when they saw him, these first followers of Christ, before he ascended, they worshiped him, but some doubted. Matthew are bookends of worship and awe and wonder and inquiring and doubting as well. During our annual moments of introspection, of being still, of lighting a candle, many times we get dangerously close to the answer. Dangerously close to the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, who could change our lives forever. All earthly power was on the side of King Herod, but all heavenly power was on the side of the baby. You can't stop Christmas. You can't cancel Christmas. Grinch couldn't do it. Scrooge didn't do it. King Herod didn't do it. Why? Because Christmas is all about the power and the purposes of God himself. You can't stop Christmas. You can't stop the relentless love of God in Christ. As Paul said in Romans 8, nothing can separate us from this love. I ran across a short story I want to share with you about a small town in the Appalachian Mountains. It's Christmas Eve, and the town is quiet under a starry winter sky. Daniel Harper hasn't been to church since his wife Anna passed away about 3 years ago. Christmas used to be her favorite time of year, filling their farmhouse with carols and the smell of baked goods and Lila's giggles. But now the holiday only reminded Daniel of their loss, and their 8-year-old daughter Lila didn't understand her father's grief and sadness. She still believed that Christmas was a magical season, and she said, "Daddy, do you think Mama can see us from heaven?" And Daniel didn't respond. He just stared into the fireplace. His heart was too heavy. That Christmas Eve, Lila begged Daniel to take her to the midnight candlelight service at the local church. Reluctantly, he agreed, and snow crunched beneath their boots as they walked to the small stone church, its stained glass windows glowing softly in the night. Inside, the congregation sang "O Holy Night," and the pastor told the story of Jesus' birth, how God sent his son into the world, not because the world was perfect, but because it was broken, and that Christ came for the lonely, the grieving, the weary, and that Christ came for you. Daniel's eyes filled with tears when he heard these words. He had spent too long trying to protect himself from the pain that he had buried. He had forgotten how to hope. When the congregation lit their candles, the sanctuary was filled with a warm, flickering light, and Daniel felt something stir in his heart. As they walked home, a gentle snowfall began, and Lila reached to catch some snowflakes on her tongue. "Mama would have loved tonight," she said. And Daniel stopped in his tracks and whispered, "She would have. She really would have." Kneeling close to Lila and holding her close, he looked up into the night and saw the stars and felt a flicker of hope. When they reached the farmhouse, Daniel noticed something that was unusual there. On the porch sat a small basket filled with food and a handmade quilt and a card that read, "You are not alone. Merry Christmas." Tears streamed down his face as he realized that someone from the church had seen his pain and cared. That night, Daniel prayed for the first time in years, thanking God for the gift of his son and for reminding him that even in the darkest moments, the love and light of Christ could still find their way all the way home.